We are back here on Tech Tuesday on Northwest Digital News. Seated left to right on your screen, Harry Brelsford, Kevin Hunter, Tim Sutinen, and Kyle Torgerson here on the broadcast today. And we got some great information for you guys on updates on technology coming for 2019. Well, Harry, you had a webinar actually that you did on this just recently, and so we're going to use some of those slides that you used in that presentation and talk about those a little bit today. I want to, because we're going to start with security. I want to mention, Harry, that you and I and Kyle were all at Interface not long ago, and pretty much every vendor, every booth that was set up there had to do with security on the web. I'd have to say security is kind of a big deal these days, isn't it?
You know, it's so big. I don't even know how to discuss this. I guess I would liken it to a show we did recently where you spoke about, I believe it's your son's success in technology and his first job.
Yep.
And the best I can come up, I mean, we can call it the year of security. We you know, it's security. I mean, what can you say? The best advice I would have is, you know, to tell a young person to leverage the movie The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman to go into security. And I think I've said that on your show before, but it's an evergreen. It's not going anywhere. And you know, if I could point to one thing last year and then maybe one thing next year, would be people are finally realizing, you know, security is just not the traditional firewall or the physical security, but increasingly we're seeing companies have, a lot of vendors have success with what I would call security education. So they're educating users not to double click that link in an email. And we did, Kevin, we did a show on phishing.
Yep.
At one point. So, gentlemen, what's your take on that? That's my best take on security. Is it's so big, it's so important. Anyone who's young listening, go into security.
you know what? I got to get Tim's take on this too. This was a kind of a little bit of a surprising piece that we got from one of our guests up at Interface. We talked to a professional hacker, Jeffrey Graves, up there. I believe you have a conversation with him as well. One of the things that I was really surprised by, so we think about all these different tools, techniques, you know, that Tim is very familiar with helping keep companies safe. I was blown away by the fact that Jeffrey stated that probably 80% of the clients, he can simply just show up to the place of business, wear a IT badge, and they'll show him where the server room is. He walk right on back, they don't even know who he is, walk right on back, install his devices that he wants, and walk away and hack the corporation like that, you know, hack the business like that. Others, he would just simply call them and say, hey, we've noticed some problems on your computer, and just gently walk the person through. And within moments, he goes, this helpful human nature that the receptionist has is giving him the information he needs to just hack into the organization remotely. So it's kind of interesting to me when I think about this is how businesses aren't really taking this seriously, and they turn over their tech to people without any IDs whatsoever. Can you imagine if your banker was like this? You know, you showed up to a bank and I'm going, hey, you know, I'm just here to check on Harry's account, and they're going, oh, okay, there it is, you know, head on back, and I'd clean it out and away we go, and you're going, wait, what happened? But that's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yep. And it starts from the executive suite. I have seen executives do the same thing, be every bit as gullible. And even like Harry mentioned about the people education. Yeah, education is very important and it helps you a lot. But it's only about 80% effective. You're always going to have the 20%. No matter what you tell them, they will click on that link. Therefore, you need like link protection or advanced email security and whatnot.
Yep. IoT. Let's move on to IoT.
Well, you know, that kind of helps us segue right into one of the descriptions of this was idiot of things. So when it comes to technology, not always are people smart about this. Well, IoT, as everybody knows, stands for Internet of Things. Go ahead, take it away, Harry.
Well, you know, I want to keep it fresh, gentlemen. You know, we've talked about this topic before. The idiot of things. We've had some good conversations about IoT. So here's a fresh update, and I had said this in passing on a prior show, Kevin, because you'll remember I gave high compliments to the automobile industry and how there's actually a fair amount of IoT development coming out of Detroit. A firm in Detroit opened a Seattle office, et cetera. You know, the automobile industry has driven some IoT isms. And the fresh update I want to give you is I get it on two fronts.
Mm-hmm.
One is I'm on vacation this week in Colorado. So we rented a car and had 500 miles, late model car, and it has 4G Wi-Fi in the car. It's a small SUV,
Mm-hmm.
and boy, howdy, I got to tell you, that's pretty cool. When I was trying to stream KEXP on my earphones going across the prairies of Colorado, and hold the stream. So,
Mm-hmm.
high compliments to the automobile industry. I know that's near and dear to your heart. And then closely related, and Kyle, I don't know if you could be so kind as to make a side note. I don't have a paper in front of me, but let's talk 5G
Mm-hmm.
after the first of the year. And I see 5G, the fifth generation of mobile phone service, closely related to IoT because that's going to allow, you know, you can hold a stream while crossing the prairie. So like having autonomous cars,
Mm-hmm.
right? They've got to be able to hold that connection. So that's my IoTism today is rent a cars.
There you go. Well, to the point about the automotive industry being a little bit of a leader there in several things related to technology, is I was actually led to exploring the online market, online media, which I'm in 100% today. I was actually led to explore that by the car industry because, like, even Ford Motor Company itself was doing a online broadcast back years ago, and I was, you know what? If big players like this are doing it, there has to be some sense there, and so they were actually one of the places that led me here. Well, let's move along to blockchain technology. People are a little bit familiar with this in part because of Bitcoin and other things that are going on out there. Talk about this a bit, Harry.
Yeah, I got my head back into blockchain, and two things. One is, first of all, let's define it for the audience. I have to define it for myself when I get too far away from it, and it's the best description I ever heard is a single source of truth that we
Mm-hmm.
agree to a distributed public ledger. So, Kevin, you and I have to agree on a blockchain, right?
Right?
And once we have that agreement, I could be shipping containers from China with a lot of paperwork and processing and tracking and all that. And you and I could have that paperwork, that workflow is a better word, that workflow managed by blockchain in a secure manner. And outside of U.S. customs, outside of the banking system, I'm not suggesting we have nefarious bad deeds going on, but it does allow us to work outside the banking system, for example.
Sure.
And and so that's number one. What is blockchain? Number two is I think in my audience of the small medium business, this came up the other day that we may be a little bit too far ahead of the curve. That blockchain is a very interesting academic exercise. It's a very interesting enterprise exercise
Mm-hmm.
to the likes of IBM. So I am not predicting. I'm going on the record that I am not predicting a huge upsurge in small business with blockchain in 19. Come back and talk to me in 2020. You
One
heard it here first.
one
Good.
interesting blockchain application that I've heard of would be like the record of all of these land titles and the property ownership.
Yeah,
It would be a
yeah.
perfect application for that, where you could see all the transfers from since day one that all these properties have taken. So there's likely going to be something to that effect, even on the government level for that.
Oh, government, enterprise. We have women and children on the line, so let's not talk about criminal endeavors. But
Yes.
you get the point. All
Let's
right,
move on
next slide,
to
please.
application layer. This is OSI, and for our followers, that's Open Systems Interconnection. Harry, what do you got?
Well, for your audience and all the ships at sea, forgive me for laying down the OSI model, but I'll explain it very quickly. This is a technical model that we use in network computing, and Tim and I probably have both spent more time on in this area in our careers. What's interesting is layer 7. What we're saying at layer 7 is the application layer. So all that stuff below is for the system engineer. At the application layer, My point here is that in 2019, Tim and Harry and managed services providers and consultants, we have got to get involved in application delivery. So, for example, it's not just good enough to do security and infrastructure, but you might need to get involved in a CRM system, an
Mm-hmm.
ERP system, help people with marketing analytics. And that's new for some of us, right? Because we came up through the School of Engineering. Tim, what's your take? I guess I'm trying to articulate that we have to add business value at the app layer.
Yeah, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, so
Okay, fair enough.
it takes a little bit to wrap my head around for the non-technical aspects of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's just Kevin. I guess what I'm getting at, and we've talked about on prior shows, is us in technology also need to become business consultants, business advisors, right, to
Mm-hmm.
stay relevant.
Right.
That's again, maybe not the best example to whip out the OSI model, but that's the horse I'm riding.
There you go. Well, let's move along to AI, artificial intelligence. A lot of conversation and a lot of fears around this subject here. What are you predicting for 2019?
Well, I mean, the horse is out of the barn. I mean, the computational power has gotten so strong that, for example, just on my Facebook feed a little bit earlier, I was reading an interesting piece on Google in the Christmas season at a mall has a test bed for facial recognition. So you can come up like a photo booth, right,
Mm-hmm.
in a mall. You can come up and it will recognize and identify you. That's good and bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's good and bad. But I don't think we dispute the computational power has gotten to that point, and it's only going to get better. Chaos creates opportunity. This is clearly disruptive, but I'll end on this: that I'm frustrated how AI has become this buzzword because, gentlemen, a few years ago when I did a big data startup, it was called big data. Then it became machine learning, which I got that trial and error, machine learning, and then it became AI. And sometimes I just get a little frustrated by the buzzwordedness of our industry because now this
Mm-hmm.
is the hot word.
Right.
Yeah, it ties into the security part of it too. Like some of the news endpoint security products tie
Yeah,
this machine learning / AI into them, like Cylance and some of the new stuff from Sophos.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in that case, everything helps everything. Absolutely.
Let's move along to MSP isms, managed service providers. Visit about this a little bit.
Yeah, I just want to highlight one thing. Again, I was speaking to a different audience recently with this slide. So this slide wouldn't be as relevant for Tech Tuesday, except over on the side, I have a thing called shadow channels.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing, so you got to remember our economy is made up of channels. There's a retail channel, both physical stores and online. It's fairly rare to buy direct from a manufacturer and OEM. I mean, just think about a Dyson vacuum cleaner. You're probably not driving to the Dyson manufacturing facility and giving them a few shekels and putting one in your car and walking away. It's
Correct.
going through distribution. It's
Mm-hmm.
going through a channel. And that's a huge part of our economy. So channels aren't going away. But what's interesting about the shadow channel concept is that the me's and the Tims of the world have to realize that customers are doing a lot of their research up front. Kevin, we've talked about this, where they're doing 60, 70% of their research online
Yep.
before they ever call Tim,
Yeah, that's
right?
correct.
And they may not call Tim. I mean, they may discover, oh my goodness, I can just buy that off Amazon, and that that's fraught with risk. Letting someone buy technology off Amazon and implement them themselves, then Tim has to come along behind and clean it up. But that's what I mean by shadow channels. Is channels are not going away, gentlemen. They're just changing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the best example is Tesla. They made a complete shadow channel where you can buy Teslas directly from the manufacturer, unlike the Dyson.
Yes. Well,
Yeah, good. No, good.
let's move along to UCAAS, Unified Communications as a Service.
Yeah, in the
big.
yeah, well, and well, Tim, why don't you lead? Let's switch it up here. You take the lead on UCAS or Unified Communications, and then I'll pivot off your comments.
Yeah, you look at the old world PBXs that we put in, even the IP PBXs, they're on-premise servers. You have to deal with those. You have to do the updates on those. You have to create the VPN tunnels. You have to create the secure certificates, etc. Whereas when it's in the cloud as a service, this PBX sits at the manufacturer's or the cloud provider's site, where you can then just remotely provision a phone, provision your tablet, provision your phone, and your smartphone, and get to all of those services. The voicemails over email, the you can have your phone anywhere without having to deal with a silly VPN tunnel.
Yeah.
Like it was in the olden days, and the management is a lot more simple. The updates happen automatically instead of the IT guy having to do them.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. By the way, that's one of the best affirmative statements I've heard on UCAS. Because here's my concern. I don't doubt its relevancy and the security and the simplicity that Tim is discussing. I concur with that. My fear is more some things I bumped into the other day about, and just what I've seen with my own eyes is we don't use voice as much as we used to. And so there was a really good article in USA Today about a week ago when the state of California briefly wanted to think about taxing text. And what they talked about was about a 30% decline in voice traffic, which is where the state of California gets some tariffs and some revenue, so they have to make it up, right? I mean, it's a good article. If voice goes down 30% and you have a taxation model based on voice, how are you going to replace it? And so they were looking at taxing text. But I concur with the statement that the article made that voice has probably declined by 30%. I mean, I just think of my own behavior. I think of when I go out and just observe people. And then the other thing would be the spamming. Now, I know spamming is more of a mobile concept up at the top of the screen to the left. But with the spamming, just this morning, I was reading an article on, I think it's called Smart News on my phone, and it's over a third of mobile phone calls are now spam, and they're predicting by the end of next year 50%. So my concern about the sector excitement of unified communications, not the engineering and not the technology, but I'm just a little concerned that we may be headed towards a trough of disappointment in terms of consumption with voice. And I welcome your opinions. I didn't write the book on great ideas.
I think you're dead on the money, though, Harry, because technology, started a loss of face-to-face communications that were happening, and now we're seeing a significant decline in actual voice communications that are happening. No doubt, we're moving more and more away from those direct interactions.
I think a part of the decline in the voice communications is also the fact that people are using, like Harry said, rather the tariff lines, like where the governments make tax revenue out of. They're now using things like Microsoft Teams, like we're heavy users of Microsoft Teams. They use Slack, they use Zoom, they use the cloud services for doing the voice rather than sending it over the traditional PSTN.
Well, Harry, we're just about out of time, so take a minute and talk about Windows 7 migrations.
I will. So thank you for let's squeeze this one in. So my company, SMB Nation, we went deep 4 years ago into XP migrations, and you might remember the hoopla was very much like Y2K. The world is going to end on April 14th, 2014, right? The world's coming to an end. And what we did is we created a labor market. So we used a software platform that is like Odesk or other labor markets, and we provisioned that. And the idea was the SMB Nation membership, so 50,000 MSPs, we could assign them to assignments like, hey, down in Florida, there's a retirement home that needs to refresh over the weekend with new laptops and Win 10. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and and it was underwhelming. Would be the XP migration motion was underwhelming, even though people understood the security risk. And so here, I'm just putting it out there that we have a first initial deadline coming up on Windows 7 about a year out, 2020. So it's a legitimate 19 conversation. I guess I would say manage your expectations. Having invested in Windows migrations, I don't think I got another investment round in me. Um, it does exist. I just don't think the world's going to come to an end like I was led to believe 4 years ago. Tim, you went through XP. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, what's Microsoft doing? Well, if you subscribe to Azure, they will give you 3 more years of Server 2008 R2.
Yeah.
So, in other words, they have the infrastructure in place to support Windows 7 for another 3 years for sure. And I think they're going to pull some kind of monetization trick at the nth hour and say, hey, yeah, you can stay if you pay.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, we got to leave it there. We are out of time. Appreciate everybody who joined us here on the broadcast on Twitch TV, on YouTube, Patreon, and Facebook. Special thanks to everybody who joined us here on the broadcast. Harry Brelsford, Kevin Hunter, Tim Sutinen, and Kyle Torgerson here on Tech Tuesday from Northwest Digital News. Thanks everybody who joined us for the broadcast. Till next time, take care.